The good news is that if you're poor, you don't have to be poor any longer. If you're sick, you don't have to be sick any longer. And if you're an outcast, you don't have to be an outcast any longer. There's room at the table for you. You're invited in. There's a relationship, not only with the Father, but with other people. Life and health and relationship is what the good news is all about. Welcome. What if work was your worship? What if we could learn how to make work sacred? That's what I want to talk about today and the lessons that I've been learning in this process. But first, have you heard that there are words in other languages that literally mean being worked to death? The Japanese have a word that's crazy that has infiltrated their vocabulary that literally means work to death. And I'll tell you about that in a moment. But the fact is, we are living in a day and time when people are working themselves to death. The statistics are overwhelming. They say that stress is really killing us because something like 75 to 90% of all doctor visits are related to stress and diseases that are rooted in stress. Forbes did a study ages ago that showed that something like 1 million people every day miss work just because of stress. The fact is, we are living in a time in history when people are absolutely exhausted. They're running themselves to death, tired in their body, soul, and spirit. I think it's interesting that there's research that shows, like, in the early 1900s, over 100 years ago, I think it was like 1910 or something, there might have been a study done, that it showed that the average American got 9 hours of sleep, and now the average American gets something like 7 hours of sleep. It doesn't help that we don't even know how to rest. And so that is something I want to talk about in length in more videos in the future. But what does it mean to make work become our worship? How can we make work sacred? The word that the Japanese use is called, I don't know how you pronounce it, but I think it's Karoshi. I believe it's Karoshi. And that is the word that infiltrated their language. I think they started using it in 1969. That was the first case of someone, a young man in their 20s, like 25 or 28 years old. The case study was that they were worked to death. There's now the Ministry of Labor in Japan. One of their main goals now is to stop and prevent deaths by overwork in their culture, because this has so infiltrated the Japanese culture, this concept of working yourself to death. And although we don't have a word yet in our language for it, in the English language, these concepts are running us into the ground. And I speak from personal experience in my own life of being an entrepreneur in the startup of 3 businesses at once and having a brand new baby and a second child, even when they were still pretty young. We actually had to rebuild after a fire right after our second son was born. And so basically we had 2 different seasons of startup with our 3 businesses. And I know what it's like to be overworked. My husband knows what it's like to be overworked. But we have been learning how to work from a new place so that our work can become worship. Our work is sacred. There's something peculiar that happens when people retire that I want to tell you about in a minute. It's a bizarre thing that I've noticed. And that's why I don't think retirement is even a biblical concept. But I'll get to that in a moment. What was the design of work? Why did God create work? Work was created from the beginning with this element of worship. God created Adam and Eve in the garden and gave them the commission job of cultivating and tending this garden. They were given the assignment of naming all the animals. That's not difficult. That just takes a lot of creativity. Imagine all the animals on earth parading past you, and your job is to just name the animals. The work that Adam and Eve did was joyful. It came easy. It came from a place of rest and relationship with their Heavenly Father. It was something they could do together. So there was relationship together. There was a connection to their identity, what they were made for, what their natural gifts and talents were. It's only after sin entered the world, the fall, as we call it, in the Genesis account, you get a couple chapters in and suddenly all of creation is in an uproar and everything is just, it's been turned upside down. All the rules have changed. Adam and Eve have more or less been kicked out of the garden. And the consequence of their actions of doing what God commanded them not to do, which was eating of the fruit of this one tree in the garden, the one thing they were told not to do, they did. The result was that God cursed the ground, and he told Adam that from that point on, basically, he was going to produce by the sweat of his brow, that it was going to cost, he had to labor to work and toil to get the ground to produce something. And Eve was told that she would then have to work in bearing children. You can go fact check me, but God did not curse Adam and Eve. He cursed the ground and he cursed the serpent. The consequence was that Adam and Eve were basically going to have to labor and work to bring results from their labor, both Adam physically laboring in the ground, and it's very interesting that the same word is what we use for a woman to give birth. So suddenly work became miserable. It was punishment. It was frustration. It was anxiety. It was difficult. It became a burden. Work was overwhelming. Now we think, if you were to think of work, the words that come to me are being a cog in a machine. It's rote manual labor or boring tasks. It's just being a number in a system. It's having to stamp a timesheet, so to speak, showing up when someone else tells you to show up, leaving when they tell you to leave. It's getting your breaks when you're allowed to go. So there's almost a slavery tied to work. And there has been historically. Throughout the centuries, the average person has had to slave away for very little reward. But the story doesn't end there. In the Bible, Christ comes. The whole story is about redemption. If there's one word for the whole story of the Bible, it's redemption. Jesus redeems everything. He is resurrected. He overcomes death in the grave. The good news is that if you're poor, you don't have to be poor any longer. If you're sick, you don't have to be sick any longer. And if you're an outcast, you don't have to be an outcast any longer. There's room at the table for you. You're invited in. There's relationship, not only with the Father, but with other people. Life and health and relationship is what the good news is all about. And so suddenly work is redeemed. And this is where we are called to work from a place of our identity and not from a place of service and what we're doing. In America and Canada, I think most of the Western world, when you meet somebody, one of the first questions you are asked, or you will ask them, is, what do you do? And 99% of people, at least in modern Western culture, I know it might be different in other cultures, but at least in our culture, and if you're watching from somewhere else in the world, please tell me how it is in your culture, in your nation, and maybe make a note of where you're from. But the question is, what do you do? What's your title? Who do you work for? What's your position? Because value is based on position. Value is based on what you do and how much you make. Most people have their identity in what they do. And the whole purpose of this channel really is, the bottom of it all, is to challenge you to begin to not get your identity from what you do, but from who you are. And if you want to learn more about that, the videos that I'm producing are going to go into greater depth in that in the future. But suffice it to say, work is redeemed. And the whole point of work is to find purpose, to glorify God, to serve people, to tend to creation, to use your gifts and talents. Let me say that again. That was profound. the whole purpose of work. We were created to work originally in the garden. And if it's been redeemed, if Christ redeemed it, then what is the purpose of work? If work is holy, if it's sacred, if it's worship, then it's to glorify God, it's to serve other people, it's to tend to creation, and it's to use your gifts and talents and be who you have been created to be. So it's for relationship, for creation, it's for God, and it's for your own joy. I've never heard anyone else say this. This is coming from my own research. But that's the purpose of work. When I mentioned just a bit ago about this crazy fact, I remember stumbling on this years ago, and you can look it up yourself. But the statistics are off the chart for how many people die shortly after they retire, especially men. When men retire, they lose their purpose. Most men, more than women, although that's changing, but historically, when men retire from work, they shortly thereafter die. And it's because their purpose, their identity is connected to their work. And when they have no more work, they no longer have a reason to live, they die. So I totally have been against retirement since I really started studying the concept of it. I think God created us to work till we die and to live out our purpose till we die. But our work, if it's worship and it comes from a place of identity and who God's called you to be and being who you were made to be, then you can work till the day you die. And you have reason to live long past whatever age you may work at an organization or work for a company. Because if your identity is in God and your identity is in who God's called you to be, then it doesn't matter whether you're volunteering. It doesn't matter whether you're being paid for the work. You're going to keep working because work is just a way you worship God because you're doing what you were made to do. And so this is the question for you. If work is worship, does your work feel like worship? If work is supposed to be sacred and holy, does your work feel like it's sacred and holy? The people that are profiting in their work are the ones that are doing it from this place. There's a lot of people in the secular world that have this figured out more than Christians. And so they've maybe got 2 or 3 of these 4 figured out, and they are thriving so much more than Christians are because they understand this concept that if work is worship, then doing what you're made to do is going to accelerate you, is going to bring fulfillment, is going to move you out of the place of slavery into the promised land, so to speak. When you are doing work that serves other people, that's going to move you on that spectrum out of slavery into the promised land. When you're tending creation and you're bringing life to the natural world, you're moving out of slavery into the promised land. And ultimately, the highest good and the highest goal is to worship God while you're doing it. And I think we ultimately worship God when we're doing this, whether or not we are doing it intentionally or we are doing it by choice. But the people that are living most joyfully, most vibrantly, from the deepest place of their being are the ones that are doing their work from a place of worship. They are doing what they were made to do. They are being who they were created to be, even if they don't know the Creator and don't know the Creator's voice yet. But by being who they were created to be, they are already revealing God's glory. And I'm going to give you an example of this, but an incredible story of how powerful this imagery is. But before I share that, you have to know that in the next video, I want to go into the most powerful supernatural strategy you can use in business and in finances to change your life. And it's so radical. And the stories I want to tell you are absolutely insane. In fact, when I was prepping for the video, I was crying because as I was preparing to share one of the stories, it is so profound. But what was I saying? The story that I want to tell is that years ago, I was guiding in Alaska on the Inside Passage, which if you look at a map of Alaska, it's the part that's really connected to Canada. They call it the Alaska Panhandle. It's near where Juneau, the capital of Alaska, is. And so I was on I think it was a 46-day expedition. It was a renowned wilderness therapy program. We'd done an incredible river trip paddling on the Stikine River in Canada. This is my little cat that's just wandered up onto my desk. I don't know if I can introduce you to. This is my son's special cat. Anyway, his name is Indiana Jones. Anyway, he's a lover, and he is reminding me right now that he's doing what he was made to do, which is just taking another cat nap. So anyway, I was paddling on the river, the Stikine River. We were paddling in the Inside Passage. We did some ocean crossings to different islands. We did some mountaineering on some different islands. It was in a stretch of more open ocean water in the Inside Passage. I was in the lead boat, and ahead of us was something floating in the water, and it was bizarre. And the closer we got, the clearer it became that we were seeing an eagle floating in the water. And the closer we got, the scarier the situation looked, because this eagle looked like its eyes were rolled back in its head, and it looked like it was going to die. We paddled so close I could have reached out and with my paddles scooped it close to the boat. And all I wanted to do was rescue this eagle. But there was a senior instructor that was over me on the leadership team, and he wouldn't let me get this bird and try to rescue it and save it in the boat. And I really felt that I was supposed to honor that leadership and respect his position under the circumstances. And so we paddled past this eagle, and it was one of the most horrifying things I've seen. I wasn't sure I could have done anything about it. I couldn't even comprehend how an eagle could be floating in the water, eyes rolled back in its head. We use the phrase in English, a fish out of water. Well, this was a bird out of the sky, right? I just coined that now, but it's just a terrible scene. And I snapped a picture of it, and if I can, I'm going to go find that to share with this video when I post it. This image was burned into my mind. And later, when we finished the course, I was telling the story to my dad, and he suggested that I tell my grandfather, who had been a highliner, one of the top fishermen on the West Coast before I was even born. And so I ended up sharing this story with my grandfather, and he knew of accounts of similar stories. And what he told me was that eagle had probably come down to catch a salmon, catch a fish, and it got its claws into him. And when they latch to go and it picks the weight of that fish up, what happens is their talons lock. And the only way for their talons to unlock is for the eagle to be actually weighted on the ground, resting, and then they can open and unlock their talons. But that way, when they're flying, they never let go of their fish. And so he said what probably had happened is this bird laid hold of a fish that was too big for it to carry. Now, he gave me some hope, because he said he had seen or heard of stories that a fish could actually swim to shore. And so he was probably exhausted from battling this fish, but there was a good chance that that bird could make it to shore, could release those talons and eat its prey and fly another day. I don't know what happened to that bird, but I do know that that was the moment that I realized that if I'm not doing what I was made to do, then I can't give glory to God, because an eagle flying in the sky gives God glory all day long. It's revealing the nature of God and who God is by doing what it was born to do and doing it with joy all day long. It doesn't struggle. It's not sweating. It's not laboring. It's not fighting to fly. It's not in anxiety. It's not frustrated. It's not discouraged. It just is. And when an eagle does what it was made to do, it is who it was made to be. So if you want to learn how to make your work worship, how to worship with your work, you have to figure out what you're made for. You have to figure out who you are. Who were you created to be? You have to answer the being question first before you figure out what you're supposed to do. And so, even this cat here is hilarious. We've adopted cats recently. We've become cat people after I've made fun of that for years. And what do these cats do almost all day long? they just lay around and take naps, and it's ridiculous. When they hunt, but the rest of the time they sleep all day long and they just annoy the heck out of you, and they bring us joy to no end just watching them. And so be who you were made to be, then figure out how to do what you were made to do. There's questions you got to ask. I mean, who are you called to serve? Where are you called to serve? Not everyone is assigned to the same people. Not everyone is assigned to the same geographies or environments. Made to function, even like a plant. I love the metaphor of trees or plants, because every plant has a perfect zone that it thrives in, it grows in, flourishes in. And it has the perfect amount of water, the perfect amount of sunshine, the perfect temperature, and the perfect soil composition. And if any of those are off, that plant is dying. And so if you are dying in your work, if you're being worked to death, something is wrong. It's not just overwork, it's the stress. If you are stressed in your work, it's because you're not in the right environment. You need to get in the right environment. You need to figure out who you're called to serve, where you're called to serve, what you're called to do. And ultimately, you have to figure out who you're called to be, because if you don't know who you're called to be, you'll never figure out these other questions. And those are ones I want to help you answer in the days to come and in the other videos. But let me remind you, the next video, I want to tell you the most supernatural, phenomenal strategy you can use in your finances and in business to accelerate, to bring growth. I've got a couple crazy stories to tell you, one of which literally brought me to tears when I was preparing for it today. So I'll see you in the next video. Can't wait. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. I'm so excited to be doing videos because this is me doing what I was made to do, if you can't tell. I'll catch you later. Thank you.